I, a seemingly happy European wife, cheated on a stranger after getting drunk at a bar. My name is Amanda, with long, sun-like, golden waves of hair casually draped over my shoulders, swaying gently with my every step and a lazy air about the ends. My green eyes are like deep lakes, hiding countless unknown thoughts, and beneath my high-nose bridge are lips that always carry a faint smile, the color of which is as delicate as rose petals. I am tall with straight, slender legs. When I wear high heels, I look even more graceful. My curvy figure is wrapped in a tight-fitting dress, with every turn attracting the attention of many people. At one point, I thought I had married for love, and the early days of our marriage were indeed as sweet as honey. My husband David and I entered the marriage hall with the blessings of our relatives and friends. At that time, we only had eyes for each other, as if the whole world revolved around the two of us. We would stroll hand in hand on the park trails early on weekends, enjoying the fresh air and each other's company. We would also sit on the sofa in the evening, cuddling, sharing the joys and sorrows of the day. However, as time passed, life gradually became filled with trivial matters. David's work became busier and busier, and he left home early in the morning and returned late at night every day. Our communication became less and less. After returning home, he would always collapse on the sofa tired, dealing with work on the computer or communicating with clients on the phone. The warm interactions of the past gradually disappeared. I began to feel like a transparent person in this family. Despite the material comforts, I could never fill the emptiness in my heart. On an ordinary evening, I watched David work overtime again and not be able to come home for dinner. I sat alone in the empty dining room, the food in front of me long since cold. A strong sense of loneliness welled up in my heart, and I suddenly felt that my life was so boring and depressing. So, I put on a black low-cut dress, which I used to wear when I went out with David, carefully applied a delicate makeup, put on a pair of sparkling earrings, and stepped out of the house resolutely in high heels. The city was aglow with lights at night. I took a taxi to a bar in a busy area. The neon lights in front of the bar were flashing, the colorful lights illuminating the surrounding streets. People coming in and out of the door all had excited and expectant expressions on their faces. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door to the bar. Inside the bar, the music was deafening. The strong rhythm of the drums seemed to pound on my heart, making my heartbeat quicken. In the dim lighting, people swayed their bodies on the dance floor, releasing their passion. The air was filled with the smell of alcohol and perfume, mixed with the laughter of people, creating a unique atmosphere. I walked through the crowded crowd and headed for the bar. Behind the bar, the bartender skillfully shook the shaker, and the colorful drinks looked especially tempting in the light. I found an empty seat at the bar and said to the bartender, "Give me a martini, a little strong." The bartender looked up at me, smiled and nodded, then got busy. In a moment, a martini was placed in front of me. I lifted the glass and took a gentle sip. The strong taste of alcohol instantly spread in my mouth, burning down my throat and into my stomach, making me cough a few times. But this stimulating feeling made me feel a long-lost sense of exhilaration, and I took a few more big sips, trying to numb my inner pain and emptiness with alcohol. Everyone around me was enjoying the night to the fullest, but I felt like I was in a different world. I looked at the people on the dance floor, their faces full of smiles, as if they didn't have any worries. I couldn't help but think of my happy times in the past, and a pang of sadness filled my heart. I asked myself in my heart, what on earth has made my life turn out like this? Just as I was lost in my thoughts, I suddenly heard someone next to me say, "You don't look very happy drinking alone, do you?" I turned my head and saw an unfamiliar man smiling at me. His voice was deep and magnetic, and it made my heart flutter slightly. This was the first time I met Jack, and at that time, I didn't know that this encounter would completely change the trajectory of my life and drag me into an unpredictable emotional whirlpool. Sitting at the bar, I was lost in my own thoughts, and the hustle and bustle of the bar seemed to have cut me off from the outside world. The strong drink was taking effect, making my head feel a little dizzy and my vision a little blurry. Just then, I looked up and noticed a man walking through the crowd towards me. His pace was steady and confident, and every step seemed to carry a unique rhythm. In the dim and flickering light of the bar, his figure stood out. As he gradually approached, I finally got a good look at his face. His name was Jack, with deep features, and his blue eyes were like the ocean, as if hiding countless stories. Under his high nose bridge, his lips are slightly upturned, with a faint smile, giving a person a sense of both mystery and charm. His skin is a wheat color, glowing with a healthy luster in the light. His muscles are clearly defined, as can be seen from his firm arms and broad shoulders. He must work out regularly. He walked over to me, nodded politely, and said in a deep, magnetic voice, "Do you mind if I sit here?" I was a little surprised. After all, in a bar like this, it's not uncommon for people to strike up a conversation, but his temperament and conversation made me feel different. I hesitated for a moment, but nodded lightly and replied, "Please sit." Jack sat down next to me, asked the bartender for a glass of whiskey, then turned to me with a smile and said, "You seem to be in a bad mood, sitting here alone. Do you want to chat with me?" I didn't want to confide my troubles to a stranger, but his sincere eyes and gentle tone made me open up. I began to tell him about my dull married life, the loneliness and emptiness I felt that no one could understand. As I spoke, I became more and more emotional, and even my voice began to tremble. Jack listened quietly, without interrupting me, and from time to time he nodded gently, his eyes full of understanding and compassion. When I had finished, he raised his glass, lightly touched my glass, and said, "Life is like this sometimes. It can make us feel lost and helpless. But don't forget, everyone has the right to make a new choice." His words made my heart tremble, as if I had seen a glimmer of light in the darkness. I looked up at him, my eyes full of gratitude. Our conversation then became more extensive, ranging from music and movies to travel and dreams. We discovered that we had many common interests. He told me about his experiences traveling around the world, and I was fascinated by the interesting people and things he had encountered. It was as if I had experienced those wonderful journeys with him. His humor gradually made me relax, and my previous worries and sorrows were also cast aside. I couldn't help laughing at his jokes, and in this bar, I felt as if I had found a confidant to confide in. As the conversation deepened, the distance between us also grew closer, and the atmosphere became a bit ambiguous. Under the influence of alcohol, I felt my consciousness become a little hazy and my body became light and floating. I looked at Jack, his face looked exceptionally charming in the light, and an inexplicable impulse welled up in my heart. And he seemed to have sensed my change. A trace of imperceptible light flashed in his eyes, and then he reached out and gently held my hand. My body trembled slightly, but I did not resist. Instead, I felt a long-lost warmth and palpitation. We sat quietly holding hands, neither of us saying a word, but a special feeling filled the air. The music and the laughter of the people around us seemed to be the background music to this ambiguous atmosphere between us. At that moment, I seemed to forget my identity, that I was a married woman, and just immersed myself in the beauty of being with Jack. As time passed, our communication became deeper and deeper, and we got to know each other better and better. I found myself becoming more and more attracted to him. His intelligence and talent, his gentleness and thoughtfulness, all made my heart flutter. And the way he looked at me became more and more fervent and deep. In this lively bar, it was as if we were in a world that belonged only to the two of us, and everything around us became unimportant. However, a little voice in the back of my mind kept reminding me that I couldn't do this, that I had a family and a husband. But this voice was getting weaker and weaker under the combined influence of alcohol and emotion. In the end, driven by impulse, I completely lost myself and fell into this improper emotional entanglement with Jack, without knowing what consequences it would bring me and how it would turn my life upside down. The lights in the bar were still flashing, and the music was deafening, but between Jack and I, it was as if a quiet space had formed just for us. As our conversation deepened, the atmosphere between us became more and more ambiguous, and an indescribable feeling quietly spread in the air. The alcohol made my consciousness gradually blur, and my usual sense of reason and morality were thrown to the wind. Jack's eyes revealed a fiery passion that attracted me like a magnet, and I inexplicably responded to his gaze. In that moment, everything around me became unimportant, and I knew only that I longed for his closeness. He slowly reached out his hand and gently stroked my cheek. The warmth of his fingertips spread through my body like electricity. My heartbeat quickened, and my breathing became rapid. Instead of resisting, I closed my eyes slightly and let his hands roam over my body. His lips lightly touched mine, and for a moment, I felt as if I were in the clouds, leaving all my worries and sorrows behind. Driven by this impulse, we left the bar and went to a nearby hotel. The room was filled with an amorous atmosphere, and the lighting was dim and soft. We embraced each other tightly, and driven by desire, we did something we shouldn't have. At that moment, I completely lost myself, completely forgetting that I was a married woman and that there was a husband, David, waiting for me at home. When it was all over and the passion had faded, I gradually regained some sense. Looking at Jack sleeping beside me, a strong sense of guilt welled up in my heart. I realized that I had made an unforgivable mistake, and my heart was filled with struggle and pain. I got up gently, dressed, sat by the bed, looked out the window at the night scene, and tears flowed involuntarily. I thought of David, of the good times we had had, of the vows we had made at our wedding. And now I had betrayed him, betrayed our marriage. I hated my own weakness and impulsiveness, and I hated myself for losing my way at this time. I kept asking myself, how was I going to face David? How was I going to face this broken family? It was already dawn when I returned home. I opened the door carefully, afraid of waking David, who was still asleep. Walking into the bedroom, I saw him lying quietly in bed, with a faint smile on his face. My heart felt like it had been hit by a sledgehammer, and the pain was unbearable. I sat down by the bed and looked at him quietly, my heart filled with guilt and self-blame. I remembered when we first got married, how he took such good care of me, and all the sweet times we spent together. And now I had hurt him in such a way. How I wished that time could be turned back, so that I could go back to that moment without making a mistake, so that I could cherish our marriage and our feelings. In the following days, it was as if I was living a nightmare. Whenever I saw David, my heart was filled with guilt and fear, for I was afraid that he would discover my secret. I tried to act as if nothing had happened, but I couldn't hide the pain inside. I became quiet and withdrawn, no longer the lively and cheerful person I used to be. David seemed to sense something was wrong, and he asked me if I was feeling unwell or if something was troubling me. I forced a smile and told him I was fine, but I knew in my heart that my lie would be revealed one day. I began to avoid his gaze, afraid that he would see my secret in my eyes. At work, I couldn't concentrate. Tasks that used to come naturally to me were now incredibly difficult. Images of being with Jack kept popping up in my head, like nightmares that wouldn't go away. I began to doubt myself, my morals, and my character. I felt like a disgrace. Jack, on the other hand, has been contacting me frequently since that day. He keeps calling and texting, but I dare not respond. I'm afraid that he will once again stir up my inner desires, and that I will once again fall into that bottomless pit. I want to forget him, forget everything that happened between us, but it's not that easy. I'm in the depths of pain and self-blame, and I don't know how to face it all. I long for salvation, for the ability to make amends for my mistakes, but I don't know where to start. Every day, I struggle with the pain and wonder what the future holds for me and how this wrong experience will affect my life. I know that I must make a decision soon. Either I sever all contact with Jack and try to save my marriage, or I confess everything to David and take responsibility. But either choice is incredibly difficult for me. At this moment, I can only wander in pain and confusion, waiting for fate to decide. After leaving the hotel, the cold morning wind hit my face, which made me feel a little more awake, but the chaos and guilt inside me did not diminish at all. I dragged my heavy footsteps towards home, as if I were treading on my own conscience with every step. When I opened the door, the silence in the house made me feel a little overwhelmed. I carefully took off my high heels, trying not to make a sound, as if I were a thief in fear of being found. Walking into the living room, I saw a note my husband David had left on the table. It said, "Honey, breakfast is in the microwave. Remember to heat it up before eating. Don't work too hard. Love you." Looking at the familiar handwriting, my tears almost welled up, and a flood of guilt washed over me. I tiptoed into the bedroom and saw that David was still asleep, his face showing a hint of peace, completely defenseless. I stood quietly by the bed, looking at him, as memories flooded back. All the good times we had spent together, all the sweet moments, all came flooding back to me. I remembered the shyness of our first encounter, the romance of our walks on the beach, and the determination with which we supported each other in the face of difficulties. And now I have betrayed him, our love, and our marriage. I changed into my loungewear, walked into the kitchen, and looked at the breakfast in the microwave, but I had no appetite. I sat down at the table, and images of Jack kept flashing through my mind, images that made me feel sick and ashamed. I kept asking myself, how did I become like this? How could I do such a thing? At that moment, David's voice came from the bedroom. "Amanda, are you back?" I quickly wiped away my tears, adjusted my emotions, and replied, "Yes, I'm back." David walked into the kitchen in his pajamas and saw me sitting at the dining table. He smiled and said, "Why didn't you sleep longer?" "I thought you were going to be late." I forced a smile and said, I came back early and didn't sleep." David walked over to me and kissed my forehead lightly, saying, "You don't look well. Are you feeling unwell?" I shook my head and said, "I'm fine. I may have drunk too much at the bar last night, and my head is a bit sore." David said with concern, "Don't drink so much in the future. It's not good for your health." I nodded, but my heart was full of bitterness. In the following days, I tried hard to get back to my normal routine. As usual, I prepared breakfast for David, saw him off to work, then tidied up the house and went shopping at the supermarket. But I could never calm my mind, and every moment I spent with David made me feel incredibly guilty. In the supermarket, I saw a young couple holding hands, laughing and chatting as they selected goods. Their happy appearance reminded me of myself and David in the past, when we were also so sweet. But now, everything has changed. I lowered my head and quickened my pace, not wanting to see the scene that made my heart ache. After returning home, I began to seriously consider my future. I knew that I could not continue like this and that I must work hard to return to my family and make up for my mistakes. I decided to start treating David with more care and cherish our marriage from now on. I started learning new recipes and wanted to cook a sumptuous dinner for David. I spent a few hours in the kitchen, carefully preparing his favorite dishes. When David came home from work, he saw the food on the table and gave a surprised smile. He said, "Wow, it smells so good, honey. Why did you suddenly cook so much today?" I smiled and said, "It's nothing. I just wanted to surprise you." During dinner, we chatted as usual while eating. David shared interesting stories from work, and I tried hard to respond to him, trying to make the atmosphere light and pleasant. But I could never completely relax inside. I knew that the mistake I had made was like a deep crack running between us, and it would take a long time and a lot of effort to repair. In the evening, David and I lay in bed together, and as usual, he took me in his arms. I leaned my head against his chest and listened to his heartbeat, feeling warm and moved. I vowed silently that I would love him well in the future and never let him get hurt again. Despite my efforts to return to our family, the guilt never really goes away. I know that I still have a long way to go before I can truly return to my old life. But I am willing to do whatever it takes for our family and for our love. I hope that time can slowly heal my wounds and bring David and I back to the good times we had in the beginning. The days passed by as I lived in fear and trepidation, trying to play the role of a good wife and to bury the shameful experience deep in my memory. I thought that if I was careful enough and if I worked hard to repair my relationship with David, life would return to normal and it would be as if nothing had happened. However, fate always seems to play tricks. One weekend evening, David and I were invited to a party thrown by a mutual friend. I carefully selected a light-colored dress and applied a delicate, understated makeup look, hoping to look my best. On the way there, David and I chatted and laughed, and the harmonious atmosphere made me temporarily forget the unease in my heart. The party was held in a friend's luxurious villa. The spacious living room was brightly lit, with soft music playing in the background. Guests were gathered in groups of 2 or 3, laughing and chatting. I took David's arm and politely greeted everyone, keeping a smile on my face the whole time. David and I sat down in a corner of the living room and started chatting with our friends. As we were having a good time, I looked up and scanned the crowd. Suddenly, my body froze and my smile instantly disappeared. At the other end of the living room, Jack was standing there, holding a glass of wine in his hand, and his eyes were staring straight at me. My heart suddenly felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. In that moment, the surrounding laughter and lively atmosphere seemed to drift away from me, and the whole world was just Jack and I, our eyes locked. There was a complex emotion in his eyes, a mixture of pride, defiance, and a hint of something I couldn't quite read. I, on the other hand, felt a sense of fear and unease, as if I were a prey that had been targeted by a hunter, with nowhere to escape. I tried to calm myself down, looked away, and pretended to carry on chatting with my friends as if nothing had happened. But my mind was completely elsewhere, and all I could hear was the sound of my own pounding heart. I could feel Jack's gaze on me the whole time, and it made me feel uncomfortable. After a while, my friends got up to get some food, leaving David and me alone. I glanced at Jack and saw that he was walking towards us. My palms were sweating and my legs felt weak. I didn't know how to face him. "Amanda, what a coincidence, running into you here." Jack came up to us and greeted us with a smile, but his tone was deliberately intimate. I managed to force a smile and said, "Yes, what a coincidence." David gave me a puzzled look, and I quickly explained, "This is Jack. I met him by chance at an event before." Jack shook David's hand naturally and said, "Nice to meet you, David." David responded politely. For the next few minutes, they chatted about some inconsequential topics, while I sat on the sidelines, on pins and needles, and could only interject once or twice from time to hide my inner panic. Finally, Jack said he was going to say hello to some other friends and left us. I let out a sigh of relief and my body suddenly felt limp on the sofa. David asked with concern, "What's wrong, Amanda? You don't seem quite yourself." I quickly shook my head and said, "It's nothing, I'm just a little tired." But for the rest of the evening, I could not relax. I could feel Jack's figure moving through the crowd, and every now and then he would glance my way. I was afraid that he would do something inappropriate, or that he would inadvertently reveal our secret. Halfway through the party, I excused myself and hurriedly left my seat, saying that I needed to go to the bathroom. I washed my face in the bathroom to try to calm myself down. Looking at my pale face in the mirror, I knew that I could no longer avoid the situation. I had to find a way to deal with Jack, otherwise my life would be completely ruined. As I came out of the bathroom, I just walked to the corner of the corridor when I heard someone call my name, "Amanda." I turned my head and saw Jack standing there, his eyes revealing an irresistible sense of pressure. My heart once again rose to my throat, and my legs felt like they were nailed in place and unable to move. "Let's talk," Jack said in an unyielding tone and pointed to a room next to us. I knew I couldn't refuse, so I followed him in, gritting my teeth. The room was quiet, the lights dim, and I could hear my own rapid breathing. I didn't know what Jack would say or do next, but I felt like I was in an ever-deepening predicament, one that I had created myself. In that dimly lit room, Jack and I stood face to face. The air seemed to have frozen, suffocating and making it hard to breathe. I clenched my hands, nails digging into my palms, trying to dispel the fear and panic inside me. Jack slowly walked towards me, and with each step, my heart lurched. When he stood in front of me, I couldn't help but take a step back as the familiar yet unfamiliar scent hit me. His mouth curled up slightly, revealing a wry smile, and his eyes gleamed with greed and cunning. "Amanda, you didn't think you'd see me again, did you?" Jack's voice was low and laced with a hint of triumph, as if he already had everything under control. I bit my lip and tried to sound calm as I said, "Jack, it's over between us." "What do you want?" Jack chuckled and said, end? It's not that simple. Do you think after what happened, you can go back to your happy little family like nothing ever happened? His words were like a sharp knife, stabbing into my heart, making me ache so much that I could hardly breathe. I know you're afraid that your husband David will find out about us, Jack continued, a hint of menace in his eyes, so you'd better do what I say, or else. He paused deliberately, his gaze fixed on me as if he were enjoying the fear on my face. A strong sense of anger and unwillingness welled up in my heart, but more than anything, I felt fear. I asked in a trembling voice, "What do you want? Money? I can give it to you. Just leave me alone." Jack laughed heartily, and his laughter sounded especially harsh in the silent room. "Money? I don't need that," Jack said contemptuously. "What I want is very simple. From now on, you have to listen to me and be available whenever I need you. If you do as I say, I promise I won't tell David about us." I stared at him in disbelief, my heart filled with despair. I never imagined that he would make such an outrageous demand. You're threatening me," I said angrily. "You can't do this. It's immoral and illegal." Jack shrugged nonchalantly and said, "Morality? The law? Do you think these are still relevant in this situation? Don't forget, you were the one who betrayed your husband in the first place. If you don't want him to know, you have to do as you're told." My body began to tremble uncontrollably, and tears welled up in my eyes. I thought of David, of the good times we had had, of his love and trust in me. I couldn't let him get hurt, and I couldn't let our family break apart because of my mistake. But I also didn't want to be threatened by Jack and become his puppet. "Why are you doing this? We were just an accident. Why can't you just let me go?" I said with a tearful voice. Jack was unmoved, however. He said coldly, "Do you think I'm just playing around? From the moment I saw you, I knew you would be mine. Now you are mine, and don't even think about getting away from me." I felt sick to my stomach, and my disgust for him reached its peak. But there was nothing I could do, so I endured his threats in silence. Jack nodded with satisfaction when he saw that I was no longer speaking, and said, "Remember what I said, and don't try anything funny. If you dare disobey me, I guarantee you'll regret it." After saying that, he turned around and walked towards the door. When he reached the door, he turned back and looked at me and said, "By the way, you'd better not think about calling the police or telling anyone, otherwise, you can't afford the consequences." Then, he opened the door and left the room, leaving me alone in the dark, shivering. I don't know how long I stayed in the room. It wasn't until I heard David's voice outside that I came back to my senses. I quickly composed myself and opened the door to go out. David saw me and asked with concern, "Why did you take so long? Are you not feeling well?" I forced a smile and said, "It's nothing. I just stayed inside for a while and got a little tired. Since then, I have been in endless pain and fear. Jack's threats are like a sword hanging over my head, ready to fall at any moment. I live in constant fear every day, not knowing when he will reappear and make those unreasonable demands. I want to fight back, but I'm afraid of losing everything. I am sinking deeper and deeper into this dark abyss, unable to find a single ray of light. Life has become chaotic, and the happiness and peace I once knew are gone. Ever since Jack threatened me, my life has been in a dark abyss, every minute and every second filled with fear and anxiety. During the day, I force a smile on David's face and try to maintain a semblance of calm, but inside I am like a frightened bird, terrified at the slightest sound. At night, I often wake up from nightmares, in which Jack's sinister smile and threatening words haunt my mind like ghosts and refuse to go away. I was distracted all day and couldn't concentrate on anything. While preparing dinner in the kitchen, I would accidentally cut my finger. While cleaning in the living room, I would stare at one place for a long time. David noticed my unusual behavior. He repeatedly asked me with concern if I was feeling unwell or if something was on my mind. I always gave various excuses to get past it, but my heart was full of guilt towards him. In this painful torment, I constantly struggled with whether to confess to David. On the one hand, I was deeply afraid of losing this family and losing David's love. We have spent so many beautiful moments together, and he is the most important person in my life. I can't imagine what a dark and painful life will be without him. I'm afraid that once he knows that I've betrayed him, he will be completely disappointed in me and leave me, and I will become a lonely person, bearing the blame and scorn of everyone. On the other hand, Jack's threat is like a sword of Damocles hanging over my head, making me feel incredibly scared and helpless. I know full well that he is a man who will stop at nothing, and if I don't obey him, he really will tell David about us. And I'm afraid that his demands will become more and more extreme, that my life will be controlled by him forever, that I will become his puppet, losing all my freedom and dignity. I began to repeatedly recall every detail of my time with Jack, trying to find his weak points and a way to escape his threats. But every time I thought about it, I became more desperate, because I realized that I knew very little about him. Apart from that chance encounter in the bar and his threats, I knew almost nothing about his background or his life. I had also considered reporting him to the police, but Jack's warning had deterred me. I was afraid that if I did so, he would become enraged and do something even more crazy. Moreover, I was worried that the police would investigate my actions and my shameful deeds would become public knowledge, which would not only hurt David, but also disappoint my family and friends. In this painful struggle, the days passed one after the other, and my mental state continued to deteriorate. I became taciturn and no longer enjoyed meeting up with friends and chatting as I used to. I shut myself away and bore the pain and pressure alone. One day, while walking in the park, I saw an old couple holding hands and smiling happily. At that moment, a strong desire welled up in my heart. I longed to go back to the past, to the happy times David and I had together. I realized that no matter how difficult the situation, I must not lose this precious feeling. I decided that I couldn't keep running away like this. I had to make a decision. If I continued to hide the truth from David, I would always live in fear and guilt, and our marriage would be like a castle built on sand, ready to collapse at any time. But if I confessed to him, I might risk losing him, but at least I could let go of the burden in my heart and no longer be swayed by Jack's threats. After countless days and nights of agonizing thought, I finally made up my mind and confessed everything to David. I knew it would be a difficult conversation and I might lose his love and trust, but I also understood that it was the only way out for me. I could no longer let my mistakes continue to hurt him and our family. I carefully chose a night when David would be home from work, and we sat on the sofa in the living room. I looked him in the eye, took a deep breath, and then slowly told him the secret I had been keeping for so long. As I spoke, my voice trembled, tears flowed unceasingly, and I dared not look at David's expression, only looking down at my hands. After I finished, I waited for his reaction, my heart filled with fear and anticipation, not knowing how he would face this cruel truth. Before confessing to David, I had rehearsed the scene countless times in my head, and every scenario made me tremble with fear. I was afraid of his anger, disappointment, and determination. However, when I finally mustered the courage to speak those unspeakable words, time seemed to have come to a standstill. I kept my head down, afraid to look David in the eye, and my voice trembled as I recounted the encounter at the bar, the growing intimacy with Jack, and the unforgivable mistake I had made on impulse. Every word that came out of my mouth felt like it was cutting into my heart. I could feel my body trembling slightly, and tears flowed uncontrollably down my face. After I finished, the room fell into a suffocating silence. I peeked up and saw David sitting there, his face not the angry one I expected. His eyes were calm, almost frightening, as if he was trying to digest everything I had just told him. My heart sank to the bottom of my stomach, and I felt like I was about to lose him and this family. I don't know how long it took, but David finally spoke. His voice was very soft, but it was exceptionally clear in the silent room. Amanda, in fact, I have long since noticed that something is wrong with you. I looked at him in surprise as he continued. Ever since you came back from the bar that time, your eyes have become evasive, and you have become very quiet, completely different from before. I have been waiting for you to tell me on your own initiative. I hope you can trust me and be honest with me. Hearing his words, I felt a mixture of emotions, including gratitude for his tolerance and waiting, and a deeper sense of guilt, as I felt I had let him down. I could hardly hold back my tears as I said, "David, I really know I was wrong." I was confused for a moment. I never wanted to hurt you. I I really regret it. David stood up, walked over to me, and gently embraced me in his arms. I could feel his body trembling slightly. He said, "Amanda, I love you very much, so much that, even if you make such a mistake, I cannot give up on you easily. But you must know that your actions have caused me a lot of hurt, and I need time to digest and accept this fact." I hugged him tightly and nodded desperately. "I know. I will make up for my mistakes with my actions. I will try to make you trust me again. I will never do such a stupid thing again." In the following days, although David did not lose his temper as I expected, I could feel that the hurdle in his heart was not so easy to overcome. The atmosphere between us became a bit delicate. Sometimes we were speechless, and sometimes, inadvertently, I could still see a flash of loss and pain in his eyes. I began to take better care of him and the family. Every morning, I would wake up early to prepare a nutritious breakfast for him, then see him off with a warm hug and a kiss, telling him that I love him. In the evening, I would prepare dinner and wait for him to come home. I would take the initiative to share my day with him, trying to make our communication as natural as before. At the same time, Jack's threat always weighs heavily on my mind like a stone. I worry that he will appear at any time and destroy the relationship we have just begun to repair. I discussed with David and decided that we could no longer wait passively for Jack's actions. We had to take the initiative. We began to gather information about Jack and try to find his weak points. With the help of some friends, we learned that Jack is actually a person who loafs around, frequenting various bars and entertainment venues and having some bad social relationships. We also found out that he had a previous record for blackmail, but because the amount was small, he was not severely punished by the law. After obtaining this information, we decided to report to the police. Before reporting to the police, I was still a little worried, fearing that this would anger Jack and make things worse. But David firmly told me that this was our only way out, and that only by letting the law punish him could we truly get rid of the threat he posed. After we told the police in detail what had happened and the evidence we had, they said they would take the case seriously and start an investigation as soon as possible. While waiting for news from the police, David and I supported and encouraged each other. We knew that there was still a long way to go and that we would face many difficulties together, but as long as we were together, we would be able to overcome anything. Finally, with the efforts of the police, Jack was successfully arrested. When we heard the news, a huge stone in our hearts finally fell to the ground. Looking at each other, tears glistened in our eyes, a sense of relief after the storm and hope for the future. After the truth came to light, David and I slowly repaired our relationship. Although the pain of the past can never be completely erased, we are both willing to look forward for each other and for our family to regain the lost trust and happiness. After Jack was successfully arrested by the police, the dark clouds in David's and my hearts gradually began to dissipate. Those days filled with fear and guilt finally faded away like a passing cloud. However, after this storm, we both knew that it would not be easy to truly return to our old lives. We needed to work harder to repair our relationship and regain the trust and sweetness we once had. At first, our relationship was still a little cautious, as if there was an invisible barrier between us. I could feel that although David had forgiven me, the pain in his heart had not completely healed. In order to make up for my mistakes, I decided to start with the little things in life and prove with actions my love for him and my determination to start over. Every morning, I wake up earlier than usual and prepare David's favorite breakfast with great care. Fried eggs, bacon, toast, and a cup of aromatic coffee. Every bite is full of my apologies and love for him. When he sees the sumptuous breakfast on the table, a flash of surprise and emotion always crosses his eyes. We will sit together at the table, sharing our thoughts and plans, and start a new day. When I'm not working, I pay more attention to David's life. I take the initiative to ask him about his work, listen to his worries and pressures, and give him encouragement and support. When he's tired, I'll massage his shoulders and tell him some funny jokes to relax him. I also arrange special activities for the weekends, such as going to the movies together, taking a walk, or going to places we've been to before to reminisce about those good times. David is also trying hard to let go of the pain from the past and accept me again. He no longer treats me with such caution as before, but expresses his feelings and thoughts more openly. We discuss our future plans together and plan our lives. He says that he hopes we can have a happier and more stable family and spend every beautiful moment together. As time goes by, our relationship gradually returns to its former intimacy. We are no longer haunted by the shadows of the past, but cherish each other and our present lives even more. Our feelings have also become deeper, as if after this stormy baptism, our love has become even stronger. One day, David suddenly proposed that we go on a trip together to a place we had never been to before and start our lives anew. I readily agreed, filled with anticipation. We chose a beautiful seaside town with sunny weather, a gentle sea breeze, and fine sand. During the days of our trip, we left behind all our worries and pressures and enjoyed each other's company to the fullest. We would go for walks along the beach together, holding hands, watching the sun slowly set and feeling the beauty of nature. We will taste the local delicacies together and share our happiness and joy. We will also participate in some interesting activities together, such as diving and surfing, to challenge ourselves and experience the joy of life. During this trip, we had more time and opportunities to get to know each other better. We shared each other's dreams and aspirations, and also frankly communicated our concerns and expectations for the future. Through this trip, we have strengthened our belief in each other and are determined to face future challenges together and create a better life together. After returning home, our lives have become more fulfilling and happier. We have started to learn new skills together, such as cooking and photography, to enrich our lives. We will also participate in social activities together, make new friends, and expand our social circles. I have also learned a profound lesson from this experience. I understand the preciousness and fragility of marriage, as well as the importance of trust and loyalty. I vow that no matter what difficulties and temptations I encounter in the future, I will stick to my principles, cherish my relationship with David, and never let him be hurt again. Now, our lives are on the right track, and the pain and setbacks of the past have become the nutrients for our growth. We believe that as long as we love, understand, and support each other, our future will definitely be even better. We will go through every spring, summer, autumn, and winter together, meet the challenges of life together, and create our own happy story together. A new life has begun, and we are full of confidence as we move towards the future, looking forward to more beauty and surprises.